You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
I got Fantha.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file.
That doesn't sound too hard.
Boom! This is Making Tracks.
This is the way.
Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
I know these people. They are brutal. Does this look Jedi to you?
That's not how the Force works.
They'll never see it coming.
Count me in.
Hello and welcome to episode 262 of Making Tracks, brought to you by those fine folk over at fanfatracks.com. My name's Mark, one of your co-hosts, and joining me this week is a man who likes to talk to a lot of Star Wars people. And when I say a lot, he's done 890 interviews across 527 guests since 2000. That's a lot of talking. So, you can understand why he's a bit croaky today. It's Mr. Mark Newbold. Mark, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. Thank you for reading that out. Yes, it is a lot of talking, isn't it? But I guess that's pretty useful for a podcaster.
Very helpful. Exactly, yeah. So let's talk about this, because you were at Festival of the Force yesterday. You had, 10 panels, so there's 17 legends on stage, Matt, with you across the day. I know you're a stats man. Who have you interviewed on stage the most?
I can tell you the answer to that. It's Brian Herring. 7 times. I saw this yesterday because I've interviewed lots of people lots of times. Before we started Making Tracks together, 7 years ago now.
Something like that, yeah.
Scary. I'm grey now. You're on the list. You're high up on the list because you used to come onto 1138. And so you were a regular guest. So it was like yourself and Gary Hales and Jonathan Wilkins and people like that who were regular guests, who were quite high up, 10 or 11. So setting that aside, because you were regularly on the show.
We're nobody.
Now, I would say, I think Brian Herring I've interviewed 11 times. So 7 times on stage and then a couple of times in person at conventions and a couple of times on Zoom for the insider interview and stuff like that. He's right up there. But now, when I was looking yesterday, I think Tim Rose I've interviewed 6 times now and Julian Glover's 7 times. So those numbers are sort of starting to rack up very nicely. So, but I think over the years, Brian is the one. And we still find things to talk about. Or at least pretend we've not talked about it before and make it look like we're talking about it for the first time.
That's the thing, isn't it? Especially when you're dealing with talent who have worked on films 30, 40 years ago. It must be quite a challenge to basically ask pretty much the same questions in a slightly different way. Yeah. To make it kind of sound a little bit fresh and new to people. There's always new Star Wars fans and new people in the audience who may have never sat down and listened to Julian Glover talk. Yeah.
And it's remembering that as well. And I always have a little word before we start going. I know I'm going to ask you questions you've been asked a million times, but I just think there's probably some kid there that doesn't really know who you are and they've never heard this before. And they might remember it when they've grown up, sort of thing, like you remember odd things when you were a kid. And they're savvy enough to sort of go, they know that. Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. The most mistake I ever made was I interviewed Guy Henry at, I think it was at FanX in Farnborough, which was a lovely show. It just happened once and it was a lovely show and it was a real beautiful venue, a really good day. And I overthought it, I massively overthought it. I thought I'm going to ask him different questions because I'm always asking him the same questions. He loved the interview, but to me it felt flat. It didn't work. And I just thought after that, I'm not interviewing Guy for me. I'm interviewing Guy for the people in the audience who might not know any of these stories. So they won't have heard any of the interesting Guy Henry stories because I was so up my own, whatever. I was trying to ask him different stuff. So now I think I've got my head around all of that and just think, well, it's a blank slate now. So anyway, yes, thank you for the question. It was a good day. It was a very good day. Yeah.
But you are right, because actually yourself and myself are going to be hosting panels at Thank the Maker. We both know a lot more about the production side of TV and filmmaking than, let's say, the average person does. And so it's very...
Yet, while still being very average people, or certainly speaking for myself... Very average.
Incredibly average. But I mean, my point is that it is that thing, isn't it, of like trying to kind of make sure that you don't skip over the obvious questions because you think they're a little bit lowball. But actually, those lowball questions sometimes are the ones that make the panelists who may never have actually spoken before, especially like with Thank the Maker. Is that a lot of the people that we interview on Thank the Maker, they don't do conventions. They're not Julian Glover or Brian Herron, who are quite used to that now. They work behind the scenes, they do their craft, and they assume that through the critical acclaim that the film or the TV series gets, that's fair reward. But actually to then kind of shine a spotlight on them, it's quite nice to then kind of go, okay, so actually what does a set dresser do? Production assistant and stuff. And it's quite interesting because, again, it's also different people's takes.
Well said. Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, I mean, those guys, Thank the Maker, when we're lucky enough to have somebody like Lee Towersey on, who does a lot of talks, he just talks at Joy Builders, he just talks at conventions. He's more conversant in that way. And then sometimes, like you say, you get somebody who's done the craft, done the work, it's out there in the world and people love it. And this is their first chance to speak about it. And then you flip that when you go and, like you meant to say, Julian Glover's a great example, who's 90, unbelievably, and done this talk numerous times. And now I've realised that actually asking him the same question sometimes is more fun because I'm hearing a different slant on the same question. You know, depending on what day I've caught him on, depending on what the previous question was, sometimes it denotes a different answer. So there's actually gold in that. And yesterday he was kind of answering these very straightforward questions in such a funny way. I had Julian and Stuart Fox together. Stuart Fox from Return of the Jedi, who I'd never interviewed before, who I learned is Kyle Sollers, Cyril Khan's father-in-law. I didn't know that. Yeah, I found this out live on stage, and I hope somebody, I don't think anyone was videoing it, but there's photographs. I've seen some photographs, and I would love to see my face because what? Yeah. Can you say that? Rewind? Can you say that again? And but yeah, it's fascinating. So you're always picking up and learning new stuff as you're doing the interviews, because you know me, I don't do a huge amount of research. So two of the people I spoke to, Sarah
you saying you wing it?
Literally. Sarah Kestelman, who was a character in Knights of the Old Republic, who'd never done a convention, 82, and she'd never done a convention.
Oh, wow.
This was her first convention, so a big round of applause for Sarah. And Nick Jameson, who was the voice of Palpatine in loads of video games. Other characters, but kind of became known as the Palpatine guy. And it was his first convention as well. And so I paired him up with Alex Waldman, who was the creepy officer in Andor who attacks Adria Arjona. Couldn't be a nicer guy. And I paired them up because, you know, there's the Emperor and there's another evil Imperial, and put them together. And and so Nick had never done a convention before. So I just made sure I Googled what characters he played. And then off we go. So I'm going to crash and burn one day. No. Be there when it does, because it will.
Hey, it may even happen at Thank the Maker for we.
Don't tell Dave that.
On one final note on Thank the Maker, obviously tickets are on sale, so make sure that you where can we get them from? We've posted on Fantha Tracks about them, so just check out fanthatracks.com.
Head to Fantha Tracks. All the links are there for Thank the Maker. General admission tickets, there's VIP tickets, which are very, very nice.
Few remaining,
Not many, so hop on those quick. But it's a beautiful room. It's a new location for Dave's shows, October 17th in Winchester. So get your tickets, do that now.
This is Steve Bloom, voice of Zeborelios, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks. Caravast. May the force be with you.
San Diego Comic-Con, an event I've never been to, they have announced during that show, it was announced that Star Wars Detours is going to be coming to the world, but not in the place that you would think. You would imagine it would hit Disney Plus. It's something that's been spoken about for years and years and years, since 2012 when it first got announced at Celebration 6. And here we are, the San Diego Comic-Con announcement by Matt Senreich and Seth Green, that episodes of Star Wars Detours will be, as they refer to it, curated at the Lucas Museum of Narrative Art, which means finally we will be able to see Star Wars Detours. This news blew me away. I'm so happy because it's one of those historical things. It was one of the last big show that George worked on, and we've never had the chance to see it. And here we are, all these years later. His museum is opening on the 22nd of September. And now, as part of the audio-visual program, if you like, the programming that they're putting on at the museum, Detours is going to be shown. I will turn the question to you, Mark. What do you think of that? It was a great idea. No doubt it's a great idea. But what do you think about the chance, the opportunity to watch some episodes of Detours?
When that kind of popped up on my newsfeed, I was like, what? You know, that's really cool. So I can't remember what Seth kind of said about it. Was it? So it's a few episodes. It's curated episodes, isn't it? I think so. Yeah. It's probably the ones that either have dated relatively well in the grand scheme of things, and Disney have also probably been relatively happy to let out of the bag as well. I mean, because a couple of episodes did kind of leak, didn't they? A few years ago now. So you got a gist of what we would have got. You know, if the series has never been seen, really, or if it has been seen, it's been seen by very few people, probably only in Lucasfilm and maybe Disney, maybe.
Yeah.
So it's not the main reason to go to the Lucas Museum of Natural Arts, but it's definitely a reason.
Absolutely. One thing I like about Star Wars, this came up in conversation at Festival of the Force yesterday. Star Wars is 50 next year. It was a question I asked everybody. Star Wars is 50 next year. Can you believe Star Wars is 50 next year? Let alone the fact that you've been doing conventions for 40 years of that 50 years. Star Wars is 50, and we're constantly talking about old stuff that came out decades ago, stuff that came out before most of the people in the room were even born. And yet it still feels fresh because we're talking about it all the time. It relates to stuff that's current. And so Star Wars has a freshness. It hasn't got a sell-by date on most of its content. And there's certain things in Star Wars that are very much tied to the time, mostly stuff from the original, but even going through other things that are kind of tied to the culture. And Detours is probably the biggest one because it's 2012. And so I think Disney's take, my read of the scenario was that Disney's take was, it's too then. People now aren't going to get it. And when you have a museum that is all about history, and all about time periods. Classic artists have, this is his blue period, this is his surrealist period, whatever it might be. And you can now take Detours and put that into a museum that has elements of Star Wars in it and almost go, hey, this is the year that the Olympics came to London. This is the year that blah, blah, blah. And so it's locked into a time period. And so all the references make more sense because you're not laughing in 2026 or 7 or whatever going forward. You're laughing in 2012 at the goofiness and the pop culture references. I think it's a brilliant idea. I'm so happy about this. I have hopes for the holiday special now.
Yeah, because that's really the only real big thing that hasn't really had any love. I wonder what how George kind of got that in there.
He made it, I guess. He made it. It was a Lucasfilm.
I don't know what his credit would have been about. Probably executive producer or something, I would have thought.
Yeah, I would guess.
So that makes sense. And whilst the museum is about narrative and its effect on, like you say, pop culture and culture in general, I think there's obviously going to be parts of this, which is like, there's got to be like a Lucas journey in itself through that museum. His influences, what's influenced him, and then as other things have like intersected with Star Wars.
Because it's a narrative thing, like you say, and it's a visual thing as well. And it's a pop culture thing. You'd think that part of George might have thought, I'd like to put Robot Chicken in there. I'd like to put Family Guy. Yeah. I'd like to put Club Penguin in. I'd like to put Angry Birds in or whatever. Well, they're owned by other people. You'd have to have the conversation, the parlay conversation of, well, can we have Robot Chicken for our music? Yeah, but can we have this? He hasn't got to do that really with Detours because Detours has never been out there. It's not the same horse track. And this is just me thinking how it might have worked. So you'd like to think over the years, as you say, other little things are going to bobble up. I think there's all those TV appearances that you could, the Donnie and Marie Star Wars special, and there's all the weird, quirky things. Yeah, that you could kind of put in there, and they'll end up playing Spaceballs in there at some point. There's different things they could put onto that curated list of programming. Awesome news.
I'm Brian Herring, BB-8 puppeteer, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks. That'll learn you.
Great news. The tickets for Cantina 3 Multi-Clubs Bash at Celebration Los Angeles next year, the club tickets are out and they're pretty much sold. So if you're a member of the 501st Rebel Legion, they are Mando Mercs, Dark Empire, Saber Guild, the Joy Builders. Tickets were almost gone as I said the words, and as Marcus just pointed out, they're completely sold out now. That's how fast they're selling. But the tickets for the general admission, the tickets for those of us who aren't members of those costuming groups, they are out now, and they are selling like hotcakes. So don't hang around because they will be gone before you know it. And it's a show you cannot miss. But great news. Not only are Ozma playing, not only is DJ Elliott playing, not only are the Flux capacitors, probably on the night known as the Force capacitors, playing, but we now have a headliner. And who else could it be? It's Ash. Ash will be headlining Cantina 3, 2nd of April 2027. I am so excited for this gig. It's going to be amazing. The first two were phenomenal. And this, being in the year of the 50th, is going to be off the hook, as the kids say. What do you think, Mark?
I think the kids who said off the hook are probably about 25, 30 now.
Still kids to me.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Ash headlining basically a trilogy of Cantina gigs, which is wicked. But it's the first time Cantina's been stateside. So
yes, very true.
The previous two have been in the UK for Celebration in Europe. So this is the first time, a bit like myself, that we're heading across the pond to Celebration in America. So that's a whole other conversation.
I'm so excited that I'm jumping all over you now. I'm so excited you're going to be there. Even if we don't get on the podcast stage and the gods don't smile on us and we don't make it, we're doing making tracks somewhere. Yeah, I don't care where. Street corner, we're doing it.
Well, it's LA. I don't think we want to be standing on too many street corners. It's nice that actually... Yes, it's what is known as for the Bash, which is historically the 501st hosted event, partly because there's now so many other events on at Celebration, and also, you know, a number of things like just cost and stuff like that. It's great that all the costume clubs came together. I think Chicago was the first one, and you know, now do a multi-club bash, partly because obviously there's a lot of members who are members of all the clubs, such as myself. I think there's going to be like a separate VIP members area, shall we say, for the club members, velvet rope and all that. But yeah, and then there'll be like the mosh pit for everybody else. But it doesn't mean that we can't intermingle and high five and get drunk with everybody else. So I'm looking forward to it. I know you're looking forward to it. So hopefully there'll be a few Fantha listeners who will brought tickets and can come and join us in the mosh pit. Do you have a mosh pit for
There
Ash?
was kind of a mosh pit. I mean, when they did the O2, and like Ash, you know, Ash are like, they're brilliant. They've got so many hits and so many familiar songs.
Energy. Yeah.
So much energy. And so they did the whole thing. So I saw Metallica a couple of weeks ago, and they did the same thing when they dropped the giant footballs into the crowd and they're bouncing around. And Ash did that with giant Death Stars, and it looked amazing at the last one. Hoping for a similar kind of thing. Because, it's just a great crowd interaction moment. But yeah, it's going to be brilliant. They're so hooked into Star Wars as well. I mean, they play the rap part of Phantom Menace. Yeah. So they know all those guys. Lucasfilm know Ash really, really well. And music for Republic Commando. So it's kind of the first, waggle the air quotes, rock song or pop song that was used as an official theme for a Star Wars product. So that's an important thing, or the first one, certainly. And so there's really cool things happening there. And just the fact that, as I say, it's the 50th. And it's Ash completing their trilogy. I'm rambling. I'm so excited. I'm looking forward to this. There's loads of great Star Wars stuff coming between now and then. There really is. But to know that's on the horizon is just an undoubted highlight of the year. Very, very excited.
Hi, this is Dorian Kinji, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
The Mandalorian and Grogu, whilst it might not have had the most glorious run at the cinema, 344.9 million globally, 177.6 in the States, not massive numbers, but definitely well liked by the people that did see it. It's now on home video and on video on demand in 50 countries, straight away entered the top 10. So it's made a good, solid start. It's not on Disney Plus yet. That's still down the road. But good to see Mando and Grogu doing good numbers, doing positive numbers on video on demand. Because really, for a TV show that has its roots in a streaming show, and like any film comes out of the cinema, it's a teaser for its life on home video anyway, or on a streamer anyway. But a lot of films, a lot of people were expecting Mando and Grogu to make more money than it did. It didn't bathe itself in glory in that sense, even though it's a great film, it's brilliantly made, but it never quite connected. And we've got Starfighter coming up next year, so fingers crossed for Starfighter. We'll obviously be talking more about that as the days and weeks roll on. But video on demand, Mando and Grogu, good start. What do you think?
Yeah, strong start. And I suppose that's partly because I knew people, I'm sure you knew people who were like, just wait for it to come out on streaming. But that's good. I don't actually necessarily know how streaming numbers are for films, because it's like, it's that middle ground, isn't it? Of like, if you really like cinema and film, you're going to see it at cinema. Yeah. If there's a film that you're going to want. And then if you, not that fast, are you then going to spend arguably like 24, 25 quid to watch it on demand, or do you just wait for it to just hit Disney Plus? There's 3 tiers, isn't there, really, of how fussed people are. When you do buy it on demand, you do actually get access to the extras, which is worth watching anyway. And from all accounts anyway, at least in the UK, Steelbooks and all the Beskar Collector's Edition, they've all sold out. Either the numbers they produce is actually quite limited, or actually the demand's actually stronger than people have anticipated. I know for a fact that I didn't anticipate it because I missed out on the Beskar edition. But at $149.99, the thing better have been made from Beskar because it's quite steep. However, it's great news. So you know how like when a series hasn't been cancelled, hasn't been finished, it normally has for a start date. So with The Mandalorian, it seems to have now got an end date. So it's apparently it's run its course. So whether or not that is the case and we're not going to get season 4 or not, who knows? We shall see. I guess as with everything, it's up in the air at the moment. And actually, something to talk about was actually there wasn't really any official big Lucasfilm announcements from San Diego. Whether or not that's because they're going to hold that back for D23 or maybe for next year. I mean, what's your thoughts on that? What have you heard anything?
There's lots of whispers around that productions are ramping up at Pinewood for different things, but nobody knows what, which is as it should be. So that's a positive thing for sure. I think with the character of the Mandalorian, now he's so well established as a character, and with Grogu, obviously, they don't necessarily have to be connected all the time. Mando's job is to raise his waggle the air quotes, son, to be ready to go off into the world and be ready to live in a world where Mando's not in it because their time periods, their lifespans are very different. So it doesn't always have to be Mando and Grogu together. And I would be very interested as a viewer to see a storyline where they are comfortable with that Mando is comfortable with Grogu going off and doing his thing and Mando doing his thing and so on and so forth. That's by the by. What I'm trying to say is that I think you could start another show. And I know Lucasfilm loves launching news. Any company loves launching new shows. It's a new IP. It's Marvel's logic of let's restart this comic that's done 26 issues at number one. So we've got a new number one to get people excited about. It's a marketing ploy in a way. In the same way you took the Bad Batch out of the Clone Wars and made the Bad Batch, you could take Mando and Grogu out of the Mandalorian and put them in. Let's revamp Rangers of the New Republic. You've got Timothy Oliphant apparently every 6 months messaging guys at Lucasfilm going, hey, I'm still here. Cobb Vanth's still out in the galaxy. He wants it. And there's going to be other people. Bill Burr you would imagine would love to come back because he was so damn good and the character was interesting. And you could put that Rangers team together quite easily. We've talked about Gina Carano. So there's things like that you could do. What I'm saying, if The Mandalorian as a show is done, let's tip the hat to The Mandalorian because it was fantastic. And the film, it finished with the film, and that's a great way for a TV show to go out. It's the Community thing, and it's 6 seasons in a film. Well, we haven't had the film from Community yet, but we have had it from The Mandalorian and Grogu. So it totally did its job. It launched Disney+. I think that they will parlay that goodwill into bringing Mando and Grogu into another show because he is a standalone, strong enough character, and Grogu, of course, who's just a superstar, to come into another show. It's Worf going to DS9 from Next Generation kind of logic.
Oh, 100%, completely. And actually, one thing that I was thinking the other day was, I wonder if that whole 10-minute scene of Grogu by himself was kind of almost like a little bit of a test.
That's
just to see if whether or not like the audience would respond to Grogu on his own adventures in subsequent shows. You think about it, it's like a whole different kind of dynamic. If you've got a really kind of small character, but also one that doesn't really talk. He emotes, but there's no dialogue. So it would all be through the supporting characters talking to him and kind of explaining stuff to him. It's a bit like when they do audio dramatizations, when they have to explain the visual world. And so I thought that could be quite interesting. It also depends what the roadmap is. With maybe the end of Ahsoka season 2, is this like the end of the Mandoverse era of Star Wars, and then whatever we've got going forward, these films in production at Pinewood, is that like the next era? Is it almost like this caps off? Let's call it the Kathleen Kennedy era of Star Wars from 2012 to 2026, shall we say, or 2027?
That's a really great way of thinking of it, in the sense that you've kind of just inadvertently described two areas, because you've got the Kathleen Kennedy era, which is all of it, and that ends with Starfighter because that was the last thing she produced, and then you've got the Mandoverse, which started in 2019 with Favreau and Filoni. And okay, Mando's an original character, and so is Grogu. Okay, we know where the influences came from, but they are original characters, and they bring in Ahsoka, and she's what she is, and season 2 can't come quickly enough. And Boba Fett they inherit and have to do a kind of a tweak, because they stole so heavily from Boba Fett, they had to change Boba Fett.
Kind of the elephant in the room, really, isn't it? It's like
massively, massively.
But they could have kept him dead.
They could have kept him dead, but I'm glad they didn't. I'm glad they didn't. We had some great moments from that show, and then they can bring another character. Not Cad. I interviewed Dorian Kinsey yesterday, which is brilliant. Him and Paul Blake had never met. Cad Bane and Greedo had never met. So I was able to pull them together on stage, and they got on like a house on fire, which was brilliant. But all the things that you've set up in those Mandoverse shows, including Skeleton Crew, you can take massive elements from those and move it forward. There's no reason why Grogu can't be around at the era of Starfighter and beyond into the Rey films, because of his, because he's a species that lives so long. And hopefully by then he'll be speaking. Because you mentioned about how, nicely put, how Grogu emotes so well. You know what he's thinking, you know what he's feeling, especially. You standing next to Yoda, who is a very, very vocal character. Yeah. Same species, but totally different. So there's loads of opportunities there for them to play that forward and move that into a later era, beyond, as you say, beyond the Mandoverse. If Mando is Pedro, who's around about 50. So you think, as a character, he's probably got another 20 years. Star Wars characters healthier, different, live longer, whatever.
Yeah.
He's got another good 10, 20 years that he can be doing stuff at a certain level because he's savvy and he's smart and he knows what to do. And so there's things you can do with that character. And the Skeleton Crew kids, I still think that they will end up joining the Resistance, and you will start seeing Skeleton Crew characters played by older actors way on down the line. I think they've seeded something there that they need to get more out of the kids they've got. Let's have another season before we get there. I think you can do that. So I think, to your point, I think the Mandoverse should kind of end because it's done its job. It's set up new characters. It's set up new worlds and situations that you can now move beyond Episode 9 into the Starfighter and beyond era. So I think the Mandoverse, as you say, I think that you can kind of put a bow on it with Ahsoka Season 2 because it's done its job and you can just play it on.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
Role players, beware. There's a new game coming out. It's a collaboration between Wizards of the Coast, who, of course, used to have the license for Star Wars, Dungeons and Dragons and Star Wars. So this will see a melding, a blending, or maybe it won't. Maybe it's just nice covers and different details. We really don't know, but it's out in 2027, which means Star Wars Roleplay is back of a fashion. The quote was, just announced Dungeons & Dragons Star Wars collaboration to take place in the Season of Rebellion, coming 2027. Stay tuned for more details. There are no more details. There is a figure, a D&D gaming figure of Darth Vader with his lightsaber down. So that's all we've got as a visual. The logos together. Mark.
Yes.
Do you tabletop roleplay very often? Do you RPG at all? Is gaming a thing that you do, or more computer games for you?
It's totally computer games. And that whole kind of like West End game stuff kind of went over my head. I mean, to an extent, in respects of like, I understand. I mean, like I think the second book I actually brought was the volume 2 of Expanded Universe or whatever it was for the dictionary, which was basically based on West End games.
Oh,
stuff.
Blimey, Bill Svick, who did all the West End stuff, they mined all sorts from that. Yeah.
So that was I think that was one of the first books I ever brought, and I still got it. Couldn't tell you where it is. It's in the collection somewhere.
Yeah.
So no, it's one of those things. How can I put this? I tend to play by myself.
There's the episode title.
So stuff like any of this role-playing game or tabletop games, I'd be interested to try it. I do worry that I probably won't take it that seriously, but maybe I will. I'd be up for trying it. But yeah, because I saw the video and I was kind of like, what? Because it was slightly abstract. I mean, the only thing they really did was they said, oh, we've got something coming next year. And then Darth Vader walked on and that was it. And I was like, well, that's kind of cool. So we know it's Star Wars. But I was like, is this like cards? Is it like tabletop? Is it RPG, MMOs? Or I was like, what is this? Maybe this is something that I should know. I don't know. Season of the Rebellion, placed in Season of Rebellion, coming 2027. Is that something exclusive? Or is this maybe what they're called in like the 50th anniversary year or some part of like 2027 as in Star Wars marketing?
It's Wizards of the Coast, which is obviously owned by Hasbro. So there's the whole, that's the connection there. And in terms of what that is, I don't know. I am very eager to find out because it reads like it's not just for this. Season of Rebellion to me reads like it's for other D&D IP because they do cross over with other things as well. They've done the Stranger Things crossover and various things. As to where it will live, my head tells me, or rather my heart tells me, because it's D&D and Star Wars, that it will be a physical release. So there'll be a source book and a GM's guide and all that stuff that you would get with a physical release. And if that's the route they go down, I'm very excited because I will certainly be hopping all over that because why wouldn't you? But my big question is, my big query is this a backdoor way of reintroducing Star Wars roleplay? As I say, Wizards used to do it back in the 2010s. They finished in the 2010s before Fantasy Flight took over. And so you had an era through the noughties of Star Wars roleplay from Wizards of the Coast. And I think that's before Hasbro bought Wizards as well. I think it was before then. So you had that run, which was the one that succeeded the West End stuff, which had run for sort of 20 years, give or take. So I'm curious to see whether it will be that, whether it will be pure Star Wars with the D&D rule set. I don't know what edition of D&D we're on now, 5 or 6. So whether it will be that, or whether it will be almost like a skinned version of D&D, if that makes sense. I don't know what they're going for. So I'm very, very curious, because if this is a way of relaunching Star Wars roleplay, hell yeah, that's an exciting announcement.
Yeah. Fantasy Flight, they still got a license. They're still doing their stuff.
Yeah. Fantasy Flight do the card games now. So Unlimited and stuff like that. Atomic Mass Games are doing other elements of the role-play stuff, but it's all tabletop. So Fantasy Flight stopped doing, when they'd done Edge of the Empire, Age of Rebellion, Force and Destiny and those games, they stopped. So there's no role-play D&D style games out there at the moment. I think a lot of people would love to see a return of the West End game system, and West End as a company doesn't exist anymore. So that was always, the D6 was always just so quick and easy and dirty. You could just get on with it, roll the character up in 10 minutes and off you go. Whereas D20 with the wizard stuff was always a bit more involved.
In depth,
But then you reap the rewards of that time investment creating a character when you start playing the game. So I'm very curious to see where this will go, and I will definitely be playing this.
Well, maybe we should do some Fantha, especially if it is, if it's tabletop or something like that. And what a perfect way to actually have like yourself, who, and I'm sure there's most of the other Fantha trackers probably played it back.
Oh, Matt runs a gaming group every week, so Matt's involved.
So there you go. So and get me on board, and I'll just I'll be the noob. I'll be up for that. That'll be fun.
Hi, I'm Duncan Poe, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
Last week, San Diego Comic-Con, a panel was run out, a Star Wars Experience Journey Through the Galaxy panel, hosted by Ashley Eckstein, looking at what fans and visitors can expect when they go to this touring exhibit at the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia. It opens on the 13th of February 2027. Tickets go on sale this November. And once it's done its run at the Franklin Institute until the 6th of September, it will then head out on a 5-year journey, very Star Trek, across North America. Fantastic news. I'm very much looking forward to it. The marketing looks great. It looks like $1 million. They've got some really interesting elements to it. There's a room where you walk the path of Naboo royalty in a room of suspended fabric and projection, looking at Queen Amidala's throne room. There's a wireframe worlds part of the exhibit where you look at a wireframe TIE fighter. There's a carbon freeze capture, so it's a photo-ready moment, as they describe, come face-to-face with the full-scale replica of Han in carbonite. So there's lots of different elements. There's the Force that connects us using RFID technology, and 50 years of Star Wars, which looks at 50 years of action figure history and creation. So there's lots of elements to this exhibit, which is definitely going to be a must-visit thing. My question to you, Mark, if you had access to everything and anything and space to do it, what would Mark Mulcaster's Star Wars exhibition be? Obviously, there'd be a throne in the middle with you sitting on it. But other than that, because you're also the tour guide, other than that, what would, and I say throne, I mean a chair, I don't mean a toilet. What would your exhibition contain? What would you want to put in there? What would it be?
Oh, that's a big ask, isn't it? There's so many different ways you can skin this cat. I'll be honest, when I first saw this get kind of posted online, it kind of came up on my newsfeed, and I was like, what is this unofficial nonsense that is probably going to take my money and it's going to be really disappointing? But after the panel and stuff, this sounds really, really cool. And it sounds like it's multifaceted. So it's not just 50 years of Star Wars. It seems like it's bringing together more experiential events, carbon freezing capture and stuff like that, photo ops and all that kind of stuff. It's, as a club lead, get asked all the time, like, what experiences, what kind of things can you bring to an event or a show that people can do? And it's funny because thinking about it, you think when the last time we had a Star Wars exhibit here, we had one down on the South Bank. Well, then we had Identities.
Yes, at the O2,
And actually, Identities was probably, it's the most recent one, isn't it? So, and that, again, was kind of experiential and stuff like that. And the thing is, there's so many, for everything that you have in there, there's always going to be something that, like, somebody's going to be like, oh, why haven't they got this?
Yeah.
And so it's so difficult, circling right round in a nice synergistic kind of way. When you talked about the holiday special and all the Donnie Marie shows, I would quite like to see some kind of video library of Star Wars in pop culture through the years. Even down to, if anybody's got May the 4th Be With You, Maggie newspaper articles from, was it 81 or something like that? I think it was.
79.
When Margaret Thatcher kind of came into power on that. All the way through, all that kind of stuff. I think that would be quite interesting. Star Wars permeates everything. It has impacted so much of our lives and our, what we watch, what we consume. Distilling it down to the effect Star Wars has had on pop culture would be quite an interesting exploration in itself.
I love that. I love that because, like you say, it's how it bleeds into the real world in fashion and in, as you say, pop culture, in the influences it has, the comedians at the time that would do stuff, Star Wars, nothing but Star Wars, all that sort of stuff. All those things that very, very quickly Star Wars became as a touchstone, as a talking point in the world, obviously first in the States and then around the rest of the world. You could really go to town on that because there's been so many things influenced by Star Wars, not even obliquely, but directly. People, oh yeah, I love Star Wars. So, and you could work that right through. For me, I did the Walt Disney Family Museum years ago, about 10 years ago in San Francisco. And it basically walks you through the life of Walt Disney, right from his very beginnings, all the way through the teamwork that he did when he was working with the other artists and then the creation of Disney as a company, right through to 66 when he passed away. And the final scene, the final room you walk in is all the papers, the newspapers and magazine covers that let the world know that Walt Disney had passed away. In an era where today, if somebody passes away, everybody knows within 0.5 of a second. But back in the 60s, it obviously took longer for the word to get out. It was very affecting. And I don't know whether this would work as a museum that you could pump thousands of people through, because the Walt Disney Museum isn't that kind of museum. It's much more personal as a museum. So maybe this wouldn't work on the scale that they're going for with a touring museum like this, but that is something I would love to see. I would love to kind of walk through George's shoes. I'd like to start in his hometown, and I'd like to work through Modesto and his childhood and just see some of those moments recreated, especially whilst the guy's still around, so he can have a hand in it, and just go through, maybe not have a visceral moment where we see the car crash, but clearly that massively changed his life, didn't it? It changed his point of view on life and just made him think, oh, God, wow, I've got a second chance, so I'm going to go for it and see that journey. And the reason I would give it a through line like that, a bit like your through line of focusing on the pop culture influence that Star Wars radiated out, is that if you follow Lucas's journey, and he'd only obviously follow it to a point, which is why it wouldn't work for Disney, because they'd want to look at all the stuff that came after. But maybe that's the influence of George, isn't it, on Star Wars, if that makes sense. Post 2012, the things that we see in the Star Wars world are influenced by George. They're not by George. But we would take it up to a certain point where you're watching his hand and how he influences things. And so it would be a more linear museum experience. But then, because you're doing it that way, then you have the opportunity to really show his collaborations with Macquarie and his collaborations with Joe Johnston, his collaborations with all the people that worked on Star Wars and how they had an influence on him, because he didn't do this alone. It sometimes feels like he did. He's our Walt Disney. So, which is why I think that comparison experience would be quite nice. So I would want to see something like that, and what you'd want to put in it. And again, this is pretty dry for kids. It wouldn't be the same. It's not experiential in the way that yours might be, or this thing's going to be. And that's why mine would fail epically. But I would love to, I would love to see the original script behind a glass case. I'd love to see Ron Cobb's painting of the Cantina aliens and things like that, and certain ILM maquettes, but maybe things you've never seen before, because there's so much.
That's it. This comes back to, again, funny enough, the kind of conversation that we had at the beginning. We've both been around Star Wars fandom and everything for many, many years now. And so, we went to the Magic and the Myth, and we went to the Barbican, we won at Wembley, and then like South Bank and all that. We've seen a lot of the stuff. We've seen Anakin's pod racer. Not everybody would have. If they're going to show artifact from the, let's call it the prehistory of Star Wars. So 70, like the early scripts, the drafts, and the Macquarie kind of concept art and stuff like that. You want to be able to see that, and it needs to be in an environment whereby you can actually stop, look, and listen and read and stuff as well. Nowadays, you look at some of the experiences that you have down at, say, the Excel Centre, like Jurassic World and stuff like that, but you walk through them really quickly and stuff. But actually, I think you've got to have, for something like Star Wars, which has been around for half a century, you need the ability to be able to have the fun stuff for the kids. There's stuff that actually, the old farts like me and you can stand there and read, and that whilst the kids are kind of pulling at your arm to get you to move on and buy the merch and stuff.
Have you ever done the Potter tour?
3 times, but not for a very long time. But going in September, actually.
You've beautifully kind of described the Potter tour, because with that, there's lots of areas that are really mega detailed. Stuff in cases, stuff on screens. Warwick 15 years ago, describing the creatures that needs an upgrade. But the things like that, things that are really detailed, and you walk around. Even if we love the films and know them well, so we we get the references. But I think even I did the Japanese tour with Brian, who's never seen the films, and he said it was one of his favourite days on that trip.
Oh, really?
Because he said you could just feel the craft, you could see the work. And I think that's something that's really important to highlight. And you could do something like that with Star Wars, because with Potter, you've got all the big sets, the bus outside, the bikes, the full privet drive, and all that sort of stuff. It's brilliant because it's so evocative. And they've done a great job of setting it up. And they haven't got real owls around now crapping everywhere like they used to. So there's even benefits there. And so there's all these things that you can see and do and touch. And there's plenty for the kids. And there's the best gift shop out there. It's my favourite gift shop anywhere.
It is awesome.
It's amazing.
Chocolate frogs all the way.
That's it. And everything in there is just perfect. Top to bottom. I love the place. And so something like that for Star Wars would feel like a really clever, not simple, because, I mean, obviously the difference with Potter is that it's at Leavesden and they filmed it at Leavesden and they just ported the sets across. That is the original castle. That's the one they used in the films. Whereas with Star Wars, it's not the same. The sets don't exist. Most of the sets don't exist. If you want something from the Mandoverse, you need a great big screen.
If you want Camino, you just need some blue screen.
Yeah, exactly. Just close your eyes and dream, and then just wave some salt water under your nose or something.
Yeah.
But, there's ways of doing it. It's a different thing. So they'd have to recreate it. A lot of it couldn't be original because those sets were struck decades ago. But, man, you imagine if they thought, we're going to recreate the Dagobah Swamp. Make sure it's not a festering pool of disease like the original almost became. But, they could do things like that and set these things up so you walk through an area and, you're on Dagobah. Dragon's Lake comes up and you see Luke's X-Wing crash. Or there's real clever things when you're at Potter, you see Gringotts and the dragon comes out and the flames come towards you. And that's always exciting. You could do something like with Star Wars. You could be in the cockpit of the Falcon and there's the slug coming at you or anything. There's loads of things you could do. But I like your idea of the pop culture influence. It's just a bit different. You'd want to do something, if you had the choice to do what you wanted to do, it's just that bit different where you go, wow, that's totally Star Wars. That's totally that.
You mentioned like Harry Potter and we talk about Trek and stuff like that and what have you. And I'm sat here wearing a James Bond t-shirt.
License to Kill?
Living Daylight. It's got Timothy Dalton on for those who are listening going, what the hell are we talking about? With Star Wars, I think it's impacted pop culture so much greater than all these other franchises. Funnily enough, I was watching a Walt Disney documentary on Sky History 2 yesterday, so it's probably a few years old. I've read or I've watched a few kind of like biopic type things on Walt Disney. But this one was really focused on the very early days and merchandising and how like he wasn't too fussed about the merchandising to begin with. And then it wasn't until David Crockett came out. Yeah. It was a massive smash. And suddenly everyone, man, woman and child, wants a David Crockett hat. It wasn't until that point I was like, so that's why that's in Disneyland. But my point is, Disney and Star Wars have like these massive impacts on the world in such greater ways, and I think it's very easy to quantify. But ultimately, the problem is all the big sets have been struck. A lot of the props from like the original trilogy, they're in private collectors.
I was going to say they're out of the hands of collectors. That's right.
You think about. I mean, it's funny enough. Last night I was thinking I haven't seen a prop store auction for like loads of Star stuff recently, and it might have been one of those things that they've had a few private collectors kind of liquidate their collections recently, so it feels like it's been a massive influx. But this is what's going to happen. And no disrespect to people like Gus Lopez and that who are buying these things and will
put them in the Saga Museum,
maybe put them in the Saga Museum. Or in their private collection, but they'll be kept and they'll be loved and looked after. That's not a problem. But obviously, then they're taken away from the public, really, unless they're put in the Saga Museum to view. So my hope is that maybe they can step into the Lucas Museum. And what actually, I mean, obviously, this is being approved by Lucasfilm and Disney, but it'd be interesting to know how much, because the archives is more owned by George Lucas, isn't it? Yeah. Rather than like Lucasfilm. So be interesting to see if they can go into the archives, because now suddenly you've got a conflict of interest. You've got the Lucas Narrative Museum, and also then you've got like the Star Wars experience. So it'd be interesting to see.
Lucas Museum's been coming for years. I mean, like it was bouncing around cities for years. Now this has been announced, and Saga Museum. I mentioned that very purposely because that is the fan side of it. There's the tangible. Exactly. That's the us part of it, and so that's funding and looking for. So we've gone from 0 to 60. We've gone from having no Star Wars museums to having one Star Wars museum, one very heavily associated museum with the Lucas Museum, and a touring exhibit. So for us, as we hit the 50th, how brilliant to have all these options. For me, I'm beyond keen to see what Saga Museum does. Because knowing what those, you just alluded to Gus, and it's not obviously not just Gus, it's Gus and Sansweet and Duncan and Vic and Lisa and all their stuff coming together. And I'm sure over time, other collections will be folded in if this reaches target and launches and goes great guns like I'm sure it will, because those guys are too talented not to make it happen. So that is going to be an absolute treat. The touring exhibit, as you say, I think is more, waggle the air quotes, good for podcasts, customer facing. Because you need people to interact with it. You need people to be able to experience it. And so that is its own thing. And then, of course, the Lucas Museum is by design not a Star Wars museum. They couldn't say it more often. You'll see more Star Wars stuff in the gift shop, I promise you, than you'll see on the tour, which is fine. But then again, it's George. And this is where it works for me. And I so want us to be able to do this at Celebration next year, is walk around, because these are things chosen by George. You're in his head now. These are my aesthetic choices. These are what influenced me. These are the things that I loved. Yes. Oh, and this is a bit of Star Wars and indie, because we know you're going to pop for that.
Exactly. Lucas's museum isn't about, this is how I made Star Wars. This is about, this is what narrative is. This is how it affects culture and how then culture affects narrative. It's an in-depth look at that and a celebration of everything that is art and pop culture. And as he said, like things that get overlooked, like, commercials and soup can rappers and stuff like that. So Star Wars Experiences is going to be the celebration of Star Wars for the 50 years. And which means it's got to get small kids who might actually never have seen Star Wars, because you've got to remember, the dads will want to go to it. Yeah. The mums will then be dragged to it, and then the kids will just have to come along for the ride. And it's those kids that then, if they have a fantastic time there, they come back and go, oh my God, where do I watch Star Wars? Oh, it's on Disney Plus. And then they sit down and they watch Star Wars. And maybe some of those kids might start doing podcasts in the future and start talking about Star Wars. So me and you can shut up for a change. Yeah, so that is it. So we are going to shut up for now. But before we go, obviously, we have no listeners' questions this week. So send in your listeners' questions, your thoughts and fears. And in fact, send in what would you like to see in the Star Wars Experience Museum. But also, I'm quite curious as to know who's watched The Mandalorian and Grogu on demand, who's brought the Blu-rays. I want to know where people wait. Are they waiting for Disney Plus, or are they buying the physical copies? So if you're so inclined, let us know. And Mark can tell you how you can get in touch.
I certainly can. Great topics, and this is how you can do it.
Email radio@fanthatracks.com. Head to links.fanthatracks.com for links to our social media feeds, Fantha Tracks TV and Fantha Tracks Radio. Thanks to James Semple for the Fantha Tracks intro, Blues Harvest for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. New episodes drop Tuesdays and Fridays at 7 o'clock UK time. Our weekly news show, Good Morning Tatooine, goes live Sundays at 9 o'clock UK time on Facebook and YouTube. And remember, Fantha Tracks is absolutely free, so it costs nothing to stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news.
And that's me done for this episode, Mark.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, mate. Your voice can now be rested for another few days. What you got coming up this coming week?
I am flying off to Texas with Matt Booker to represent Fantha Tracks at Rebel Scum Con. I'm hosting a couple of panels. Panel 3 o'clock on Friday in Panel Room A on ILM's work on the prequels.
Nice.
And on the Sunday, also I believe at 3 o'clock in the same room, to look at the original trilogy. So some great guests, some interesting stuff to look forward to. I am also, and this is going to be really interesting, again at 3 o'clock in Panel Room B this time, doing a live edition of Family Feud, which I think is like our version of Family Fortunes, if I'm right.
It is. Yeah.
And yes, so I'm on there representing Fantha, and there are other podcasts and websites available. I'm really looking forward to it. I was talking to Dave Tree about this, and I kind of said I kind of want to go in and get it wrong on purpose, because I'm bored of winning quizzes. It's dull, and I'm so over it. I'm going to go in and play to lose, because
hey,
it's what Les Dennis would have done.
It's fun, but also, I mean, from the clips that I see of American Family Feud on my Insta reels and stuff like that,
yes,
it seems to be quite close to the line a few times.
Very.
So get your innuendos and your mind in the gutter. Maybe they should have asked me to join the panel instead.
Oh well, maybe no. Richard and Sarah from Skywalker to the Neverlands.
Yes.
Who? Congratulations to them, because they have a book coming out later this year.
They do. Very
proper book coming out. So I'm chuffed to bits for them. They are the hosts, and they do a lot of these shows around the States now. Yes. They do a lot of these quizzes and fun things, and they're a bottle of pop anyway. They're great fun. So I'm very much looking forward to that. But yes, I will be interested. See how close to the line line I can skirt without getting a laugh. And then when I play the audio back for you, if you get it, then it's a win for me.
It'll be British sense of humour, probably.
Big time.
Right, so for now anyway, that is all we have got time for. People can catch up with me at MCM Birmingham next weekend, in fact. Yeah, I'll be there with Rebel Legion, UK Garrison, Mando Mercs, Sabre Guild, all the clubs that we've already spoken about today already, and we will be there having a fantastic time. So until I speak to you again, sir, have a fantastic time at Rebel Scum Con, and everybody else, may the Force be with you.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's Making Tracks Live.